Good morning, everyone. From Nairobi, the green city in the sun. I am so thrilled that you could join us today. Welcome to the LBJ's webinar on this beautiful day of July 31st, the last day of July 2020. My name is Sefa Zapoth, and I am the founder and the leader at Cyber in Africa. We call ourselves the voice of Africa's cybersecurity, and our mission is really to bring, or rather take Africa's cybersecurity to the forefront of the continental and global security scenes. We do this through media, we do industry programs, events, and we work in partnerships with individuals, companies, organizations, from everywhere, particularly Africa. In this webinar, we'll consider and discuss business continuity management and a bit of investment in cybersecurity, particularly for business continuity. And we have our guests today. Two fantastic ladies and one gentleman who will address the above topic and the issues that spring during this conversation. And I'll be asking them, of course, to introduce themselves in a bit. Meanwhile, Lisa, you can help me share the LinkedIn addresses and other necessary contact information for our panelists in the chat section. And feel free, if you're an attendee, to follow us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and in other places as well. We'd love to connect with you and talk beyond this webinar. Okay, so a bit of housekeeping. Please ask your questions, seek clarifications in the chat section. Feel free again to share any information or links to knowledge materials or resources pertaining to the topic today. And then as well, in case there are any technical hitches during this webinar, we ask that you stick around with us while we try to hustle and sort those out, because whatever can go wrong at any time. Alrighty, so let's get into today's talk. I will start. Okay, fine. Ladies, please introduce yourself. Oh no, sorry. I will start with the minority person in the room. So, and that is our host, Steve. Then I will go to Samari. Then I'll go to Mariam. Steve.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Mambo, a cybersecurity professional. Been in the ICT industry for the last 14 years. I'm happy to be here to share my experiences, also to learn from all of us as we discuss about ICT investment and business continuity management. In addition to that, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Bridges. I'm more than happy to have you on this session. Thank you.
All right, Samari.
Thank you so much for having me. Samari Kachibale is my name. I have been in cybersecurity, IT audit, and general ICT security for the last 9 years. It has been a very interesting journey. Currently, I work with the Central Bank of Uganda in IT audit function. I also serve our chapter, that is ISACA, the local chapter, as the Director, IT Governance, and the liaison for She Leads Tech Uganda. I am also a mother of two little ones, a 5-year-old, making 6 very soon in 2 weeks' time, so a 6-year-old.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Okay, I am also a mother to a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hello.
Samari?
I can hear you. Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Proceed, Samari. Thank you.
Hi, Mari.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Marian Turihehi. I am an IT auditor with DFCU Bank, Uganda. I have experience of 9 years in IT security, operational IT, and cyber security. I am a mom of 2 beautiful daughters. And yes, I am so happy to be here this morning. I'm looking forward to this panel discussion. I hope that we have a lot to bring on board and, discuss and add value. So yes, let's have this started.
Right, sweet. So what I'm realizing here is that we have a combined 32 years of experience across the three of you. Yeah, that's definitely a long time. That's a whole age for some of us here. So maybe even more. It's great to have you, ladies, and it's great to have you, Steve, joining this conversation. So let's get into it. We're talking about business continuity planning, and this is one component of digital resilience or cyber resilience, if you want to be specific. Today's companies really need to invest in business continuity planning. And before we even get into business continuity planning itself, let's clarify some terminologies. Let's not assume that all of us understand what continuity is when it applies to business and IT. So if I can start with Steve, what is your view about business continuity from your own experience? What is business continuity and what consists it?
Very well, Cephas. I think the best way even to answer that question is just look at the pandemic that we are in. And the reason why businesses would want to plan for such eventualities is that, for one, that there are things that will occur that are either outside your control, and you need to plan for the business to continue operating despite those crisis being there. It could be a natural calamity, it could be a system breakdown, it could be a cyber incident. So businesses need to plan for those eventualities because they will happen. And majority of those eventualities, you don't have much control over it. So as to ensure that your business continues running, you need first to acknowledge that these risks will always be there. And if they do happen, how do we ensure that we are still able to serve our customers? How do we ensure that our operations are not brought down, due to that disaster or due to that natural calamity that has occurred? So business continuity, I would look at it from the perspective of being able to plan to ensure that your business processes or even IT systems for that matter are still available despite there being a disaster. And the disaster could be any form, as I've mentioned.
Interesting. Marion? Marion, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry about that. So business continuity. This is something that is very, very essential. It's for every business. Considering the nature of our businesses, the way in which we have automated all of our systems, our different processes, it is important that we have continuity in all of the. Okay, we need to have continuity in key business processes to ensure that we're able to serve our customers, we're able to give efficient services, serve efficiently our customers. So we cannot talk about business continuity without mentioning risk assessments. In this case, you would have to carry out a risk assessment to be able to identify your potential threats and what are your exposures, what are your threats. And this leads you now to the business impact analysis. For most organizations, you need to carry out an end-to-end analysis of all of your processes to enable you to come up with recovery strategies for all of those processes. So this now leads us to defining how much information can you lose as an organization. For certain systems, how much time can you afford to lose, to be down, for you to be able to not hit a crisis, if it is probably a banking system, how much time can you afford to have your core banking system off? So these are certain terminologies that we need to define within business continuity. Then this will now also lead you to your DRP, that is your technical plan. How are you going to test the data function of your systems? Because data is very, very important for you to enable continuity for all businesses. So yes, business continuity is very important because considering the times and the way in which we've automated and the feature of technology within businesses, we need to ensure that we can have our businesses running, we can be able to efficiently serve our customers, we can be able to ensure that information is relayed to customers, services are relayed to customers when they need them.
Sweet. Samari, any thoughts?
Thank you so much. I agree with the previous speakers. Really, it's about ensuring that our functions continue to run. We continue to conduct our services the way we would have should there have not been any interruptions. So what must we put in place to make sure that both the technical and the non-technical services are being delivered or goods are being produced, even in the event that we are having any form of disruption? It can range from a number, or whether it is cyber related or it is an act of nature. So business continuity also affects people. Sometimes executives tend to think that business continuity is about the system, the server, but it's also about the staff. Have you trained your staff to be able to take on certain roles when a certain person is not available for that role on short notice? Recently, I was reading a book. It's called 5 Presidents, and I reached a point when John Kennedy was shot, and right where they were in Dallas, they had to inaugurate a new president there and then. That was the vice president, LBJ. So immediately he was made the president. So that is business continuity. The country could not go at a standstill and wait for an election because they had shot the president. Things had to continue running. Meetings that had been scheduled had to take place. Contracts that needed to be signed had to be signed. So the nation had to proceed. So that's what business continuity is really all about. Thank you.
What I'm getting from you all,
I think,
yes, Steve.
Very well. I think I just want to add on to what Samari has just mentioned on the bit of the recovery. Once your business is down, for whatever matter, the next critical phase is, and as part of that business continuity planning, is recover. How do we get back to business? And I think maybe we'll explore it later on in the conversation. But that's a very element of the people as well as the recovery.
Absolutely. We'll talk about recovery, but I get a sense that business continuity, in essence, it's planning for failure, planning for disruption, or again, on top of that, you're having planning for recovery for when shit happens. Forgive my word. Samari had talked about BC being about risk management, being about risk and risk management. And I want to take this conversation in that direction. Starting with you, Samari, now that you mentioned that, how does BCM relate to the company's existing risk management efforts? Because again, BCM and by whole cybersecurity does not exist in isolation. So how does it fit into the global risk management efforts that an organization will be doing?
Thank you so much. Thank you. For us, first of all, should there be a disruption in the way we operate, the way we do our businesses, the way we deliver our services, for us to be able to continue, we must understand what is critical. What is that resource that we cannot operate without? What are those processes that enable us to deliver the most critical function of this business? For example, if it's in the banking industry, that will be your core banking application. That is one system that must be running all the time. But the best way to find out what is critical and what is not critical is to get engaged in risk management and risk assessment. And this is where you get to profile the processes that you have, the systems that you have, the devices that you run, and what level of importance and criticality they have to you. This is usually termed as a business impact analysis, really. So you will get to understand the profile of your organization and what is critical to you and how much you can afford to lose and how much time you can afford to be down. So you will know that, you know what, this is how much I make per hour in my core banking system. I cannot afford to be down for 2 hours. If I'm down for 2 hours, I'm going to lose my customers, my reputation is going down, I'm losing my income, it is affecting me badly. So that is the importance of risk management and risk assessment in business continuity.
And are there distinct differences between BCM and risk management from an operational perspective?
Between business continuity management and risk assessment?
Yes.
There is a difference, but one feeds into the other. It is if I come up with a business continuity plan that has not been based on the risk appetite of the organization, on the risk environment of the organization, I am probably presenting to you a desktop document that is not going to be functional at all, because it will not be relating to what is on ground in the company. So the risk assessment and risk management help you understand what is on ground, and you can use this information to come up with your business continuity plan.
Interesting.
To add on to what Summary just said,
yes.
I think risk management, business continuity is a subset of risk management, because business continuity management is a tool that is deal with certain uncertainties that come with running your business. So I would comfortably say that risk management is focused on mitigation of issues. Business continuity is concerned with the worst case scenario. What could happen? Now, this is the plan that you're coming up to deal with the worst case scenario.
Marion, can you hear me?
Don't know. That's just I don't know what she was trying to say.
All right, sweet. So BCM is BCM is a subset of risk.
Yes,
and the risk management part. I can hear you.
I would say BCM is a tool. It's a tool that is used by risk managers to basically deal with the uncertainties that come with running your business.
Well, interesting. I think taking the approach of a tool is an interesting one. Steve, from a business systems point of view, you're a big fan of resilience. Let's talk about IT resilience as being sort of a subset or a component of this business continuity planning. Where does IT and cybersecurity resilience fit into the business continuity planning, or how do they relate really? Because I know if I'm doing a cyber resilience program, one of the big things would be recovery. Worst case scenario. How does BCM come into play?
Very well. I think the most important element to first appreciate is where the position that IT has taken in today's businesses. Long gone are the days that when ICT was a support function, some guy sitting in some data center or some server room. Today, the business is basically IT. And I like using the example of where we are today. A number of organizations have been forced to digitize due to the pandemic. Of course, there are others that had already taken that approach. So that already tells us that IT is actually the business. And when you're thinking of business continuity, you cannot be talking of business continuity if you're also not discussing how you're going to ensure that your IT systems are still available, or you're able to recover back your systems, because that's what's running the business. Now, when you think of towards resiliency means that despite there being a crisis in my systems, whether a natural calamity or it's a cyber incident or whatever has happened to our systems, we are still in a position to offer our customer services. They are still able to access our mobile applications. They can access our websites. I mean, we can respond to them on email or whatever function that your systems is providing to your end consumers. We may not be able to provide that system as would be on a normal day basis, but however, we have mechanisms that we put in place to enable that functionality to continue. So now when you're thinking of business continuity, we are now starting to talk of, we have a core banking system, for example, if I'm to use the banking environment. Do we have a DR site to support this functionality, just in case if our primary site was down for whatever reason. So is our DR site ready to support our end consumers, who are the customers, when the primary core banking system is unavailable? And then on the DR site, what level are we able to support that customer? Are we saying that all business functions are available, or we also prioritizing? And I think Samari mentioned something about when the business makes, how do I put it, determine rather what is their critical assets. Because once you understand what's your critical assets, you start now even putting together prioritization in terms of recovery of those assets, if at all your key system was unavailable for all the reasons we are talking about. So when we start thinking of resiliency and now moving it closer to cyber resiliency, we are saying that despite my systems being under attack, I'm still able to provide my end consumers support and services as we still try and unravel and recover back our system to the normal status. So that's how I look at the two between business continuity and the relationship with IT or cybersecurity resilience.
It's good you mentioned that with the huge digital transformation that you're experiencing, IT is basically running businesses out here. It's not just an enabler. The business itself is IT. So does that mean that the IT department or the IT function should own the BCM? Or what do you think?
Not per se, because at the end of the day, business is run by the board or the management. IT may be part of that functionality, well and good, but that does not mean that they own the process. They are part and parcel of the process. It's just that where we are today, IT is playing such a critical role that they cannot be ignored. They are basically, as you put it right, it's the business. If there is no IT in majority of businesses today, then they are not in business. And maybe just to share some experience, I've seen a number of organizations working on their BCP, but IT is brought in at a point where, we know we have some IT systems, so let them also just coming into the program. But during the planning, development of the process, handled mainly by management, at some point they remember and realize that IT is critical, so it's brought in at that level. However, of course, that is changing with time as businesses and managers start appreciating the importance of IT within the business.
So to Samari and Marion, who owns the BCM? And how can if it is a multi-function kind of a process, how can different stakeholders collaborate?
Okay.
Samari, I'll start with you.
Okay. In operation, the BCM is majorly owned by the operations department. Because remember, we are ensuring that operations continue running. We must remember that IT is an enabler. So are all the other many departments, feeding into this operations department. So operations own the business continuity management. However, this so-called final product of a business continuity plan has come up and has received input from the various departments and the units that contribute to the organization. And there is usually a committee that is assigned the role of ensuring that this program has been put up in a way that is going to be effective and efficient when it is required. So in terms of ownership, it will lie with the operations. In terms of compliance and controls and all that, we'll have the risk department to check on it and make sure that it's running the way it should be. And then we'll have also a committee that has representation from the different stakeholders so that it can be accepted and have accurate data from the different departments. So from me, ownership is in operations. Thanks.
To add on to what Samari has said, BCM is with operations. The plan itself, though, is owned by the chief risk officer, depending on the organization. The maintenance is done by the business unit, guided by risk department. They basically guide the maintenance of the whole plan.
Interesting. I know in some quarters, some would say that it could be run by a subcommittee at the board level, or something like that. But again, I guess it depends with the organization, the structure of the organization, the setup of the organization. What kind of functions that does an organization have, and how do the different roles or functions come into play in the BCM process. So let me ask this straight off the bat. What would be the value of a business continuity program to an organization? And you can any of you can tell us really the top and in detail. Why should an organization invest in BCM? Because I know with the COVID-19 crisis, many struggled to move from on-premise to remote working, and to move their systems either from the current site to different sites, either because they were not prepared, they were never ready, they never did tests. I mean, they've had problems. So what would be the value of putting in money in terms of investment to a BCP? Let me start with Marion.
Okay, one, we need to note that BCP is changing from the traditional setting, because now a lot more organizations have had their processes automated, and yeah, we have a lot more of technology within this whole space. There's enhancement of the BCP. So why do organizations need to have it? BCP, we need to be, availability is key. We are living in an environment where if a system is off for 1 minute, the effects are detrimental to your business, to your reputation. So you need to ensure that you are available 24/7, 365 days a year. You don't have that time when you can be off and people are going to move on to the next person. So that also takes me to the issue of competition. You need to have that competitive edge over the people within the same industry that you're working with. Then also there comes in issues of compliancy. With some operations, you find that when you are down for just a few minutes, or maybe a couple of days, you're going to have to pay huge fines. So you need to be available. Then when we talk about things like social media, they're also very important. When it comes to things like reputation, you don't have to, a reputation is very, very key in this. You find if you're off for probably a day or so, I mean, tomorrow we're not going to, it's possible if it is a bank tomorrow, you may even close, because people are going to move on to the next. Their money is not going to be, they will probably give that perception that their money will not be safe with you. So BCP, yes, is very, very important for organizations. And vendors, one thing we should notice that vendors need to be part of this plan. They also need to, there has to be some level of collaboration with the people, with your third parties. The interdependencies need to be managed well, so that you don't have that time where a vendor is going to be off and they're going to affect availability of a service that you have to give to your customers. So those are my thoughts on BCP need within our organizations.
Stephen, you want to say something?
Very well. Yeah, very well. Just to add on to, I think another reason why I think BCP and BCM needs to be a must do for any organization. First, we must acknowledge that there are things that we know and probably we have a solution for them. Then there are known unknowns, things that we know that we don't know. Then there are known unknowns, things we don't know that we don't know. And I think COVID-19 was one of those unknown unknowns. As much as Bill Gates in 2015 told us about such kind of a virus, we never really paid much attention. It was an unknown to majority of us and most organizations. And if at all, even if we really stressed it back then, majority of us would have thought this looks like something that would happen in mass. And that's the importance of business continuity. Planning for things that you don't even know that would actually occur and impact your business. That to me, I think is the basis of business continuity planning.
Interesting. Marion, you mentioned something to do with vendors, and I think this is a very interesting one, because again, each organization has a lot of much external dependencies. How do you, in a very practical way, manage these vendor risks resulting to vendor failures or vendor disruption?
Okay, yes, it is true. We have a high level of interdependency in the businesses that we're running. And it's also very important that you manage your vendors right. If it's a service they're giving you, you're going to have to sign SLS. SLS to ensure that, yes, I can only tolerate this amount of time I can be off. Otherwise, beyond this time, we're going to have to deal it with this way, in this way or another. So SLS are one of those tools that organizations could use to ensure that they get the right service from their vendors. Then it is also very important that we leverage some of our services to probably if it is like information or data that we're having on premise, we could also ensure that we have some of it in different cloud. This is where the cloud comes in now. So if we're going to have maybe some bits of your data in split up in different environments, so that you have that ability to be available, to have that information when you need it. So one, we could have SLS in place, NDAs, we could have MOUs, then also ensure that we have that versatile way in which we handle our vendors. We have different vendors on board giving us different services, so that there's not that level of dependence on only one vendor in your business. I don't know if I make sense.
You absolutely make sense. And somebody can give us some of the experiences you've had, particularly even during this crisis. How did you handle, outsourced situations?
Okay, thank you very much. The issue of vendors, there's something I would like to add on to what Marion has said. Sometimes we may find ourselves operating lines of business that are highly regulated, and you'll find that sometimes vendors cutting across different regional areas or geographical areas may attract a certain form of penalty or has certain strict and stringent regulatory terms to it. So for example, in Uganda, in the banking sector, the central bank does not recommend that you have a data center outside of your country. So you can see that is something that you have to put into consideration when you're planning for your resilience and disaster recovery planning. But to get to your question, really, my experience has been, one, the good thing, we had SLAs in place. And on top of those SLAs, they usually define the kind of events that can take place, the criticality attached to them, and how much response time will be tagged to every kind of event. Another factor that has played out so well for us has been escalation, having an escalation matrix in place and knowing the right people to talk to in the event that what you're dealing with is now spanning out of your control and out of your hands. You know the right person to call, and you're able to call them in time, and they respond in time and be able to fix the issue that you're facing. Yeah. So it has been about having an SLA in place and having escalation matrices in place that have been followed and have been able to provide the required and necessary feedback or incident response management, so that we can be able to continue with operations.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I know, especially when you're having your mirrors or your copies, or you've sort of done backup outside your country. I mean, that process can be difficult, for example, probably unless you're using cloud and stuff. But Steve, you can give us an insight into issues of cybersecurity and third-party risk, because whatever can go wrong normally goes wrong at any time. How should security be factored into the SLA? Should there be clauses that define the level of risk and how to deal with that from a security perspective?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that actually. Apart from the non-disclosure agreements, usually when you're doing these agreements, you have a clause in there of a right to audit these vendors. So this means that at any particular time as an organization, we are protected. If we feel that, or if we have any, incident coming up, we have the right to come over and find out if the level of your security is in compliance with what we have. Another thing is when we are onboarding some of these vendors, we expect them, we share with them our security requirements, our minimum level of security, our security baselines, so that they can be able to match it with what is on their end. And should we go there to check, we'll find that, you know, these are working, they're working in tandem. I had an opportunity, we have a new, it's not so new, but it's relatively new. It's called agent banking. So I had an opportunity to go to the agent banking offices or where they sit and be able to find out and audit them and see if really what they promise us in their contract, that, you know, we have installed this kind of encryption, you'll be running over this kind of tunnel that is well secured. Our computers, they have antiviruses. We have, we are not, you know, your data is secure. It's not exposed to any other banks that also use this platform of ours. So we had to go in there and confirm if really what they promise or what they say they do in terms of cybersecurity is what is on ground. So it is important to keep those contracts open-ended, because without it, there's nothing much that you can do. The vendor will lock you out, and they're right. So you must ensure that at the level of negotiating and doing your contract, your baselines are clearly stated, and you have, don't leave the contracts to only the legal people. Have the IT guys in place to make sure that these contracts are speaking to our needs as IT security unit. Yeah, thanks.
Interesting. Steve, some insights?
Yes, I was actually thinking of something very interesting in terms of third parties. So today, majority of the businesses would want to outsource a function that either for lack of resources or they feel that they'll get a better service from a third party. And looking at it more from an IT perspective may make business sense in terms from a cost perspective, and also in terms of an area like cybersecurity, it may make more sense for the business to outsource to a third party. Now, a number of interesting comments have been made by both Marion and Samari in regards to how do you onboard this third party. Very important phase. But another element that people also forget, and a number of organizations forget, is what relationship do you have with this third party. We are talking of business continuity planning. They'll all fall part of the business continuity management, because they are systems that the third party is providing, or there's a service. And for example, if it's a managed security service, a third party is basically managing your cybersecurity. So what relationship do you have with those third parties, and how do you build and maintain those relations? So it's not just an issue of just having contracts. Contracts are very good, but you need to have developed a relationship with that third party where they can even go beyond what is expected of them on the SLA of the contract. You want, and especially in cybersecurity, you want to be in a position where you call me at 3 a.m., I'll still answer your phone call, and we'll probably start looking into how to respond to the incident that is happening in your business. That goes beyond the contract. Probably the contract would have a different stipulation. So it's a matter of, one, having the right documentation in terms of from a legal perspective, contracts, SLA, and building that relationship. Also, as a business, are you paying your vendors on time? Because those are the things that start building those relations. If you are delaying payments to your vendors, they'll just do the basic that is expected of them from a contractual level. But however, if you build that relationship with your third parties, with your vendors, to a point that they are willing even to go beyond what is expected of them on the contract, now when it comes to your business continuity planning, you are kind of certain and sure that when that eventuality happens and you need their support, they'll be there to assist you get back to business. Thank you.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Let me pivot the conversation to something that Marion had mentioned a little earlier, and it probably relates as well to the supply chain and the risks that come therein. And this is compliance. Marion, if I can get back to you, how do you comply in a business continuity program? How do you ensure compliance, be it statutory? I know initially you had mentioned about how if an organization in certain sectors get disruptions that last over a certain period of time, they will get fined, for either lack of services or something like that. How do you ensure compliance, or what are some of the tools and resources that our listeners can go ahead and adopt from tomorrow, in terms of ensuring that they comply?
Thank you. So for starters, we need to incorporate security within our BCP, business continuity, because that is going to ensure that whatever process you are running, it's very key to have integrity in whatever process you are running, or whatever process you intend to continue running in the event of a disaster. So one, backups are very key. I believe backups are very important to ensure that your data, customers have access to the information when they need it, as and when they need it. It's also very important that you encrypt your information, you encrypt your resources, encrypt your systems, to ensure that there are no leakages, no internal leakages going in or out. And also, again, it's also very important that you have policies in place that guide all of the entire process. So these policies are going to ensure that you're running this process within the right way. And these policies should be based on international standards, where you're definitely running your process based on standards that have been tested, the standards that have been that have worked for other organizations. So for me, those are my key points. Ensure you have your data backups are important. Your encryption is also very important, both for data, both for your systems and your processes. And then also ensure that you have policies in place that are going to guide this whole process, policies that have been tested, policies that are drawn from international standards.
Interesting. What are some of these standards? If you can mention
we
some.
have ISO 2000, that's for risk management. We have NIST for security. We also have the data privacy policy. We have one, the one that's data privacy. We have one recently now in Uganda that is being run by our NIST organization. So these policies are very important when you are trying to come up with policies to guide your process, to ensure that whatever you're doing is within the confines of the law.
Interesting. Samari, how are you guys complying in the financial services sector?
I'll just add on to what Marion has been talking about. Compliance to availability, like she said, maybe she should have wanted to talk about the Central Bank of Uganda. So most financial institutions are expected to be running, and when they are down, definitely they attract this central bank to go and find out exactly why they were down, and you don't want this unnecessary attention that could end up digging more than you really wanted to reveal about yourself. So that is why it's important to make sure that you are complying to whatever laws and regulations that apply to your country. There's also the Gdpr. In as much as this is being about the European countries, we must remember that the world is no longer geographically separated. It has now become a digital village of some sorts. So I'll be running accounts that belong to Europeans. I'll be running accounts that belong to European NGOs. And it is important that you comply to this GDPR, because if you don't, you'll find yourself down. And then again, your business continuity will be affected. Your reputation will be affected, and you lose income because some of these people may pull out their accounts from your institution. So compliance is big. It is also important to keep the necessary teams at the organization involved in the process of business continuity, so that since they know what the different laws and regulations that apply to their different subunits, they will factor this in as you are designing this business continuity management program. Thank you.
Interesting. I know we speak a lot about compliance being a checkbox issue. As long as you've met probably the bare minimum and you've ticked that box, and the auditors come and they say, okay, fine, you guys are doing the bare standard and you're pretty okay. Everything is good. But then there's some industries, for example, some of the mission critical industries, and you can talk about critical infrastructure and probably others, where it's a case of should I seek to comply or should I seek to focus on the mission? It's a mission versus compliant issue, that I have a system here that is operational, that is functioning, and work is going on well. And as long as it's working, I don't need to comply, because again, if I go into the compliance route, I might be demanded to change some things or abide by certain standards and things like those. So in a sense, compliance becomes more of a burden, and for others it becomes more of a checkbox. How do we deal with that? Because it's it's one thing to have it on paper, and it's one thing to really put it into practice.
Cephas, let me jump into it, because your first statement was actually reading my mind. Compliance is a must. Unfortunately, if you're an industry that is regulated, there are no options around that. And when you think of it from more of a cybersecurity and data protection, it's what everyone expects of you. But however, the challenge with compliance is that, as you mentioned, is that once we check that, once we tick that checkbox, most of organizations will want to sit back that because we are complying to what the regulator requires or what this law, these standards expect us, we sit back. Now, that brings in also another element, and I'll want to bring it from a security perspective. And this is something I see a lot of organizations making this assumption that just because we are compliant, we are secure. That's not the case, due to a number of reasons. In most cases, those regulatory requirements, as you've put it very well, they have put out what I'll call the basics, or what is expected of the organization. And also, when you think from a regulatory perspective, they are doing this so that they protect an industry. So let's look at the financial sector. So Central Bank of Kenya, Uganda, whichever country, would want to put in some regulations to manage and protect the industry, and of course the end consumers. So they have put out guidelines and regulations to govern that industry. But however, the institutions within that industry must go beyond compliance for two reasons. One, as I said, compliance in the case of security, compliance is not security. Secondly, I think businesses have a more I would put it more, I want to bring out the perspective of critical. We are not just doing business, we are actually addressing a society issue. It's a mission. So we need to go beyond just meeting compliance and also start thinking about our mission. What's our mission for this industry? What's our mission for this country? And not just a matter of profitability. It's a matter of, are we also impacting lives? And when you start thinking about that, now start thinking of the financial sector. If today a key bank systems are down and probably is banking half of the population, for example, what does that mean for the livelihoods of those people who will not be able to access their accounting or rather their bank details through their mobile, through their web? What does that impact somebody who is about to pay a hospital bill for somebody to be admitted as a theater? That goes beyond compliance. Compliance does not require you for your system to be available for that individual who's in a hospital about to pay up a bill for somebody who's about to go to the theater. That takes the conversation away from compliance to go into now what you are trying to put it as more of it's a mission that we are addressing, and not just meeting, the compliance perspective of it. That's my thought around it.
It's good. It's good you mentioned issues to do with the serving the society and of course making money. Now there's another case of weighing the financial returns vis-a-vis the cost of failure in complying. You see, that it's easier for me to pay the fine and keep making a lot more money than seeking to comply from an existing from the existing level that you are in an organization. Again, that brings a challenge to compliance, because if it is a typically mission critical function, an organization will opt to keep paying fines, or rather find a workaround there, as long as they ensure that they're making money. But again, who am I to say? But I know compliance is a really big challenge. Let me pivot this as we probably wrap this conversation up. I will go to Marion and Samari. You guys are, auditors and compliance and things like those are your main domain. So how do you develop a BCM capability? And you can give us a flow of what the process could look like. What are the steps and what are the things to look out for? What are the drivers that a person should put into the process? Samari?
Okay, thank you so much. If I'm to quickly give an overview of the process for developing a business continuity plan. Well, number one, you must know what you want to continue. What is it that you must know your organization? We have this thing of know your customer, but in this case, you must know your organization. You must know your assets. You must know the processes. You must know the people. You must know what is critical and what is not critical. You must know how much time can I spend when I am not in operation? What does that mean to me? How much data, for example, am I willing to lose, So if I am running an art gallery, I can go a week, and I've not lost much data. But if I'm running banking and I'm running online payments, this is Visa, agent banking, mobile money, I cannot afford to be down for more than, let's say, 30 minutes, because the repercussions will be high. So you will need to carry out a risk assessment. You'll need to have a business impact analysis. This is all about knowing what is critical, what is less critical, what does it mean to me in terms of data loss, that is your return point objective, and time loss, that is your return time objective. And then you will use these ones to model the different continuity approaches that you're going to use. Am I going to, for example, if it's IT, a disaster recovery site, am I going to run a mirrored site? Am I going to do a hot site? Or am I just going to have a room somewhere and have my computer? And when the event comes that we can't continue business, I'll have to call the vendor, come install for me the operating system, do this for me. What approach am I going to use after this? And then one thing that we must remember is that we must have management and senior management support. These guys must be in the game with us. They must be rolling the ball with us, because when they are not on this, when they are not in the agenda with us, it is very likely that you'll not get much support for this this program that you'll be running. The drivers really, like I've said, is financial. How much am I losing out of this? It's reputational. Am I going to lose my customers? Am I going to attract a fine or a penalty? Your employees, are my staff secure? Are they going to be able to run and work under these circumstances? For example, during this COVID-19, I was talking to some of my colleagues who work in the different sectors, and some of them were not even sure of their jobs. As a company, I think you wouldn't want to find yourself in a situation where your team is losing sight of your vision and they are beginning to think about themselves, which is normal, because I'm working so that I can be able to meet my needs. But while I'm at work, I lose my needs and I want to run with the company's vision. So it is important that the employees are also a great driving factor to ensure the success of your business continuity plan. I think Marion can take on from there.
Okay, thank you. Just to continue on what Samari has just said, yes, all those processes are very key. But yes, now that you also, when you have your plan, you need to do regular drills to ensure that this plan actually works. This is where you're going to have to do tests with your vendors and your different stakeholders. Ensure that whatever aspect it is that they are bringing on board can actually work in the event of a disaster. Then you're also going to have table talk exercises with your internal staff. Do they know what to do in the event of a disaster? Who do they call? That is where you're also going to have call trees incorporated within your plan. If Summary's number was off, if I was supposed to call her, who else can I call in the event that I can't get to her? Then you also have to bring in the aspect of data. That is where we have a CIA, confidentiality, availability, integrity of the data. You need to do data maintenance. Ensure that this data is, the data backups that you have are tested. In the event of a disaster or maybe downtime, can you be able to adequately access this information and use it? And then, of course, we need to incorporate cybersecurity controls in this plan as well. We need to ensure that all of the end-to-end processes are secure. That we have that also involves bringing in that involves bringing the IT security team within the strategic planning at the board. If we're going to have board buy-in, if you're going to have buy-in of this plan, we also need to ensure that we have a security person on board who is going to ensure that as we are doing a BIA, we are carrying out a risk assessment for this process. What control can we incorporate in to ensure that this whole end-to-end process is secure? So that is what I have to add on to what Summary was saying.
Where does awareness and training come into the process?
I think I talked about regular drills and tests with vendors, and of course, yeah, awareness trainings are very key. In this case, that would be with your different awareness would still come in with the tests, with the drills and the table talk exercises, because this is a plan, a continuity plan. You need to ensure that your different internal staff are well aware of this plan. They know how it works and they know what to do if there was a disaster or an event that calls for you to probably ensure that you can continue running if there was an event or a disaster that happened.
Steve, let me drop this one on you. Talk of incident management and business continuity management. How do they play into each other?
I think there needs to be a separation of the two, because an incident response does not necessarily mean that the system is unavailable. For example, the attackers or the adversary could be sitting on your systems. So the priority here is not a matter of bringing back the business. The first is containing the incident. And while continuity is a matter of thinking of, okay, so these guys are on our system. What do we do? Do we bring the system down, or what measures do we need to address to contain the adversary on our system, and more so to reduce the impact of that incident to the entire business? While business continuity is, of course, the aftermath after that. How do we ensure that we bring back our systems securely and ensure our clients are still able to receive the same services? In addition to that,
yes, go ahead.
I wanted to just add on to the conversation regarding awareness and the drills. It's very good, yes, to create awareness, and actually awareness should be to all stakeholders. And stakeholders here does not mean just a small committee, because when, for example, a cyber incident occurs, it's probably the user who's probably at an operational level who will be able to detect this. So, but unfortunately, if this conversation is just left to a CERT team, a computer incident response team that does not incorporate that user, then they are not assured or even sure of what steps they are going to take. Now, so awareness needs to be passed on to everyone. Of course, at different levels, different communication will go out to them. Now, one key important thing about a drill is that a drill prepares you for an eventuality. Assume you're in a building, they do conduct regular fire drills. When the day there's a fire in that building, people know how to respond. People will not start jumping out of windows and etc. They know the route that they're supposed to take for them to exit the building. And same case for any drill that a business has to conduct. Now, the only challenge that I see a lot in the industry is that the drills that most organizations are doing are very paper-based, very, I'll say, not very, and more so in the security sector, we are conducting drills again to meet compliance. That have you done this drill? Yes, yes, yes. We've done our tabletop. But during that incident, it's not just an issue of what plans you have in place to respond. There are other aspects like communication, which is very important. How are people engaging during that incident? The emotions during that moment are very high, and probably even tempers are high, and people blaming each other. That's another key element that also needs to be discussed when we start thinking of drill. And apart from just the emotions, there's also the bit of pressure, either from the customer, either from the management, either from your vendors or other stakeholders. So there's a lot that is involved in the entire cyber incident drill, rather than just talking to within the organization and calling 1, 2 vendors and run a tabletop. It's good, but I think we need to go beyond that for us to be really ready for that incident.
And I think doing live exercises are interesting, or, moving away from the, discussion-based sort of exercises and all that. Interesting conversation there. So let's wrap this conversation up talking about the success factors when it comes to the BCP, because again, you can have a BCP, but it sort of fails out, goes out of mission and all that, and some might fail to even measure, because one of the big things will be to evaluate continuously and review and learn lessons and apply again. So Samari and Marion, what are some of the success factors that a BCP should have?
Thank you. I'll go first. For your business continuum plan or management initiatives to be successful, number 1, you need commitment from top management. So it is important that the guys at the top understand what you're doing and why you're doing it and what it means to them, so they can roll with you, because they set the tone for you. Once the tone at the top is set for you, then everybody that is below them runs with it. Then number 2, ensure that your business continuity management is based on risk, on the risk assessment and risk analysis. So it is important that you have a business continuity plan or business continuity management programs that are based on criticality or risk, the risk appetite and risk levels of the organization. Number 3, make sure that the people and the teams are aware. My colleagues have been talking about training. Make sure people have been trained on this business continuity. They know their roles, they know their responsibilities. Ensure that you have done tests. Ensure that in places where you have tests, we have sometimes what we call reciprocal agreements, for example, where you have another organization and then you take them on to be your disaster recovery point in the event that maybe your site is down, your physical site is down. So in this case, you have to test them and make sure that, your 2 environments are in tandem. Overall, the overall staff, the overall organization, they should be in the know of what's going on. I think you already mentioned that it's about training, and make sure that your teams are always aware of what's going on. Have a way of communicating to the teams on the possibilities, incidents that happened, how they were responded to. Make sure that your staff, your general overall staff, is in support of this activity. Marion, you can add on.
Thank you. Just to add on, you more or less said everything I wanted to say. If we have commitment from management, that of course would have in terms of budget approvals. But then again, the policies or the plan, whatever plan or policy that we have in place to support that whole process, it needs to be reviewed. It needs to be signed off. And then again, we also need to be compliant to regulations. We need to have that in mind. For us to have a successful BCP, we need to ensure that we are compliant to regulations that are in place. So basically, yeah, that's it. You more or less said what I wanted to say.
All right, so there was a question in the chat from Michael Felix. He says that agency banking is more of a decentralizing the banking services with the inclusion of more people who have access to the system's critical, critical systems, but people form the weakest link in the IS triad. How would the BCM help, and what kind of investments need to go into mitigating these risks brought about by the people? What do you guys have to say? I'll start with Steve. How will the BCM help, and what kind of investments need to be made to mitigate the risks that are brought about by the people factor? Steve?
I'm just trying to think where to start off. Okay, first of all, as the bank opts to take that, I think I'll call it's a new product. Some risk assessment must be done first to assess what risk is the business posed as it takes that approach. And sometimes, unfortunately, when you compare the reason for going or going to a new market or introducing a new product is mostly driven by, the reason to maximize, of course, their profitability, to provide more access to customers, and security may not be a key concern at that moment. Not always the case, but at times. So now let's think of what risks are involved when we basically outsource that functionality to this agency banking, and you can tell if you walk around town, you'll see this agency banking. From a bank level, first you need to understand that you are giving this agency not per se access to your system, but you're providing them what I'll call not a pass. You're providing them to some point some access to your system. And as you do so, remember these are human beings. And as Felix has said very well, human is always the weakest point. And for any adversary, they would want to target the weakest link. So in terms of even creating the awareness to this agency, agent banking platforms and the businesses that are running, are they also considered as part of the business continuity management, in the sense of what if an adversary was to socio-engineer the owner or whoever is running that agency? Are they first informed about even what is socio-engineering and what measures do they need to take to re-engage back to the bank that is offering, or rather where they're offering that service? In terms of investment, of course, there are solutions that as the business decides to go that way, there are a number of solutions that the business could consider. But investments here, I would want to focus it more on the people. Because at the end of the day, you may have the best technology, in quotes, but if your people are weak or are not aware, they'll still be compromised. So I'll still say the hugest investment should always be the people. People in terms of knowledge, awareness, and also them being aware of those business continuity planning, management processes that the bank has implemented, because they are part of the business either way. That's how I would want to look at it.
Sure, and I think, yes, go ahead.
I wanted to add to what Steve said. Yes, it is very important that we have awareness on this process. It's very important that we have awareness put out for these processes. But then again, monitoring is very key. It's very important that we continuous monitoring, because this is something more. I would like to say that maybe agency banking is something that is hosted for most of it's hosted off premise and run by a third party. But as financial institutions, how can we ensure that we have some control over what is happening? One, we could ensure that there is monitoring. We have our own internal monitoring systems that we can be able to see when certain thresholds or certain any eventualities that may probably be coming that we need to sort out. And then again, it's also important that we have SLAs in place with these third parties that will, that is for the case of like SLAs that in the event that you have an issue on your side that would probably come up, that would eventually lead to probably a weakness in a system that can be exploited. How are we going to deal with this? So for me, monitoring is very key, and SLAs are also very important.
Oh, fascinating. So one last one before we get into the parting shots. What do you guys think that the crisis has taught us about cybersecurity in general, and particularly preparedness and continuity? Samari?
Thank you so much. You mean the corona COVID-19 crisis?
Yes.
Well, personally, it has taught me or us that, well, we don't know it all. We don't know it. Just when we thought that we had planned for everything, we had planned for the floods, we had planned for the fire, even we had put in there a line called pandemic or epidemic, but we did not really understand what it means, should it happen. So what I've learned from it is to take the business continuity planning process, and especially the testing part, very seriously. So if we plan, if we have our test plan and it is saying, you know, what if a fire happens, you know, we must go through this drill. We must run it. We must have some days where the teams work from home and we see how these things operate. So it has taught me that we shouldn't just keep these documents as our tabletop documents, and but we should really test them and understand and get the feel of what it means should such scenarios or eventualities take place. And I've also learned that, you know, business can continue. Business can continue, only that next time we have to make sure that it continues sooner than later. But business can continue, people can work from home. And also I've learned that we must train our technical teams to enable the work from home experience to continue seamlessly and ensure that it is also very secured. Thank you so much.
And I guess that is the new normal, in the words of Mike Tyson, that you always have a plan until you get punched in the face. So hopefully we've been punched so hard that we are going to beef up our plans. Marion?
Basically, what I have learned from all of this is that as organizations, we need to be very prepared. We need to have BCM strategies that are very adaptive and very flexible, as opposed to having something that is rigid and safe. So that if something like this that came in, you are able to easily incorporate something that will enable you continue serving your customers and ensuring that your internal staff can be able to work. That is one of the main things that I can actually contribute to this.
Yeah, adaptive and flexible, but I guess the other two would be active and proactive strategies, because you always need to be ready, right?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Steve?
I think my comments would be based also on a conversation that we held earlier before we started off the session with the other panelists, where we were discussing that there are some industries that have been shaken due to the pandemic. That also tells businesses that it's no longer business as usual. It's business unusual now. So as part of business continuity management and planning, think of the unknown. Plan for anything. Anything could happen. And it doesn't matter also the size of the business, because you could assume, yeah, business continuity management is for, you know, big corporates and the likes, but SMEs also. You can imagine somebody was running a brick and mortar shop, and all of a sudden you have to shut down and you have to start thinking, selling your products or services online. That requires a mind shift. And I think one thing very critical to organization and to business in large is that this is business unusual. Be ready for this. This is the future. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is the future. Plan for anything. Anything can happen. So we have to be ready. So I think that's a wrap. Or we can do another round of parting shot and start with you, Steve. Any parting shot with regards to the topic of today.
What else to add? I think I've said much on it. What I'll say maybe probably to just also bring the perspective of ICT investment. I think we are going for, in the future, we'll see more and more organizations, of course, now investing in digitization due to the nature of what the pandemic has made a lot of organizations now to start offering services online. So we'll start seeing more and more investment in ICT. So anyone who's in that industry, it doesn't matter which field, this is the time for you to harvest your skills. Opportunities are out there. And yeah, IT is basically the future. Thank you.
Oh, interesting. Interesting you talked of investment. That was one of the other side of the conversation you was to have today. But, future.
I brought it back as we close.
Yeah, I'll definitely, we'll do it the next time around. Mariam?
Basically, for me, my closing points are, one, we need to have enhanced business continuity management strategies. We need to ensure that we have more of our security teams, the CISO, part of the board, so that this is something that, so that cyber security controls are basically they are incorporated within our plans from the onset. So it is very, very important that as much as we running these business continuity plans, we need to know that we are coming away from the traditional setting and moving into a much more automated world that is powered by artificial intelligence, big data. So it is very, very important that whatever process we are running, whatever process that we intend to continue running in the event of a disaster is very secure. So for me, those are my key points.
Yeah, security in the midst of a disaster. I know when a crisis comes and the chaos and the confusion steps in, it's very easy to stop being security minded, and I hope that this crisis has probably taught us that as well. Samara, your parting shot.
Thank you so much. Well, business continuity management, like my colleague said, it's no longer an issue of simply compliance. No, it has gone beyond compliance. It's all about making it in the business industry. It's all about being available, because now that the brick and mortar way of doing business is being challenged, it is now being choked by all kinds of innovations, and COVID just came here to confirm what was inevitable, what was coming. It is time for businesses to understand that availability and integrity and authenticity and reliability are going to be the key drivers for the businesses that they're going to be running. So it is going to be very important for them to invest in whatever tools, the people, they shift the mindsets to make sure that they are ready for the new normal that is going to come, that has come for us. The change, this is a different age that is going to come up altogether. And for us in the IT sector, I mean, we've been prepared for too long. I think it's time for us to begin to harvest what we've been preparing for all this time. And the industries were not really getting a grip of it, but now they can see that it does pay off to invest in good IT, and availability of services is going to be a very critical metric for them as they take on this new way of doing business. Availability, reliability, like Marion said, security. If your processes are not secure, nobody's going to be trading with you, and you're going to be involved in a lot of court processing and refunds and all that kind of thing. So we are here to ensure that their businesses are safe. Thank you so much.
Very well.
Absolutely. So one thing I have learned is that with the crisis is that the internet is very stable and it can handle huge traffic and huge activity. Everyone, probably 80% or 90% of everyone has moved online, and the internet has really been stable. I think that fascinates me a lot. So thanks y'all panelists for making time for being with us today. Thanks for the insights. Thanks for the 32 years of experience that you have shared in this session. I definitely have taken a lot of notes, actually 2 pages of notes, and I look forward to using some of your comments, some of your insights as well in other places. Sorry if I don't quote you. You'll never know anyway. But yeah, Steve, you'll never know. But I'm going to be talking to you guys, and thanks to our attendees for making time. Pardon? Oh, didn't get you there. Thanks to our attendees for sticking with us for the last hour and a half. And it's always a pleasure to be hosting you every other week. And I think I have some very interesting news that has just come in. Let me read it. That as we end this month, we shall be selecting 2 individuals who represent their organizations for a free 1-hour security awareness training. So for our attendees, be on the lookout for an email from the marketing team at Yelbridges, probably from Lisa. And yeah, so watch out for that opportunity. It could be nice for your organization. Okay, thank you all for taking time to attend the session. For those who are Kenyans, I think today is a holiday, so
even us,
again,
it's also a holiday here it's Eid.
Oh yes, it's actually Eid. Oh, great, fantastic. So yeah, we appreciate your time and your commitment for being around. And our next webinar will be on the 7th of August, and we'll be discussing the role of ICT risk management in corporate governance. If you've been following our previous webinars, I think over the last month and a half, we've covered much in terms of cybersecurity from a leadership perspective, risk perspective, governance perspective, compliance, and related domains. So I'm sure the next webinar on ICT risk management in corporate governance would be a good one to sort of review and reflect some of the discussions we've had before, but also importantly bring in new voices into the conversation. So I look forward to be hosting you again next week, and probably we'll do it bigger and better. Again, as a reminder, follow us, Cyber in Africa, follow Yelbridges, follow the panelists and the hosts in the links that have been shared earlier in the chat section. So we'd love to connect with you guys. If you need help with cybersecurity services, or you need advice or consulting, always feel free to reach out to Yelbridges. If you want to talk general cybersecurity and you want to do some activities around security, talk to Cyber in Africa as well. Talk to everyone, talk to all of us. So we'd love to talk back and see what you can all do together to further this conversation. So all in all, thank you very much, and have a lovely holiday and a lovely weekend. Lisa?
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much.
And before Cephas, you close the session, I would also wish to announce that if anyone in the panelists would also want to sit in and share some knowledge as a panel, feel free to reach out. It's an open space. You really don't need to be very special to be part of the panel. So feel free to reach out, and yeah, we'll be glad to have you as a part of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to you, Cephas.
Yes, so good you mentioned about the panel. So Marion and Samari, I think I'll be reaching to you guys on the side about very interesting case opportunities that I have on my end. I know you'll appreciate them. After this, so Lisa.
Thank you,
Marion. Thank you, Marion, Steve, and Samari, for your time as well. And for
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Have a good time, and let's go make a ruckus.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.